Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. So today we are reading from the second chapter, text 32 of the Bhagavad Gita, which says, Yadrichaya Chupapanam Swargadwaram Apavritam Sukina Chatriya Partha Labante Yudam Idrisam. And this means, O Partha, meaning O Arjuna, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of the heavenly planets. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. As Supreme Teacher of the world, Lord Krishna condemns the attitude of Arjuna, who said, I do not find any good in this fighting. It will cause perpetual habitation in hell. Such statements by Arjuna were due to ignorance only. He wanted to become nonviolent in the discharge of a specific duty. For a Kshatriya to be on the battlefield and to become nonviolent is the philosophy of fools. In the Parasara Smriti, or religious codes made by Parasara, the great sage and father of Vyasadeva, it is stated, Kshatriyo hi prajarakshan shastrapani padandayam nirjitya parasainyadi shitam dharmena palayet. The Kshatriya's duty is to protect the citizens from all kinds of difficulties. And for that reason, he has to apply violence in suitable cases for law and order. Therefore, he has to conquer the soldiers of the inimical king, and thus, with religious principles, he should rule over the world. Considering all aspects, Arjuna had no reason to refrain from fighting. If he should conquer his enemies, he would enjoy the kingdom. And if he should die in the battle, he would be elevated to the heavenly planets, whose doors were wide open to him. Fighting would be for his benefit in either case. Well, that means there's not an either or situation. There's only one situation. That is, you fight and win, or you fight and die. That's the life of a real Kshatriya. Either way, you are benefited. If you die, it's not that you are, let's say, bereft of something. No, you'll go back to Godhead because you fought a righteous war, a righteous battle, and it just happened that you were killed. So you'll be, well, even if you don't go back to Vaikuntha, you go at least to the heavenly planets because of your noble effort of fighting for the right cause. That's why it says, considering all aspects, Arjuna had no reason to refrain from fighting. If he should conquer his enemies, he would enjoy the kingdom. And if he should die in the battle, he would be elevated to the heavenly planets, whose doors were wide open to him. Fighting would be for his benefit in either case. So the worst thing Arjuna could do is run away like a chicken from the fight. That would be sinful for him to do that because he's a trained Kshatriya, and therefore his duty is to fight for the right cause. Okay, let's go to text 33. Atachetvam imam dharamyam sangramam na karishyasi. Tata swadharmam kirtim cha hitva papam avapsyasi. If, however, you do not perform your religious duty of fighting, then you will certainly incur sins for neglecting your duties and thus lose your reputation as a fighter. Well, that's even worse than death. For a person who has been honored, uh, than being uh, a person who has been honored. Dishonor is worse than death. That's a saying. Why don't you look at that? Look that up. For a person who's been honored, dishonor is worse than death. So Arjuna was a famous fighter, and he attained fame by fighting many great demigods, including even Lord Shiva. After fighting and defeating Lord Shiva in the dress of a hunter, Arjuna pleased the Lord and received as a reward a weapon called Pasupata Astra. Everyone knew that he was a great warrior. Even Dronacharya gave him benedictions and awarded him the special weapon by which he could kill even his teacher. So he was credited with so many military certificates from many authorities, including his adopted father, Indra, the heavenly king. But if he abandoned the battle, not only would he neglect his specific duty as a Kshatriya, but he would lose all his fame and good name and thus prepare his royal road to hell. In other words, he would go to hell not by fighting, but by withdrawing from battle. So, what does it say, that proverb?
For whom the gods honor, dishonor is worse than death.
Say that again.
For whom the gods honor, dishonor is worse than death.
Okay.
So this is
For whom the gods honor, dishonor is worse than death. Yeah. And where is it from? Greek.
Greek philosophy.
Yeah.
Euripides.
Yeah. Yes. So, and that's what would happen to Arjuna if he refused to fight. He would be dishonorable, and he would not have any. No one would respect him after that because he was trained to be a fighter, and therefore, there's nothing wrong with going on the battlefield and being killed. He's guaranteed going back to the heavenly planets. But if you run away from the fight, meaning you're a chicken and you're violating your dharma, then you will suffer for that, and people will lose respect for you. And that's what it says here, the next verse, text 34. People will always speak of your infamy, meaning your bad reputation. And for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. There it is. For a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. So many times people are caught cheating or lying, having illicit sex, especially the politicians and very rich people. And I'll give you one example. Let's see. Who was the CEO of? Oh, wait a minute. 1 second. Interruption. So people will always speak of your infamy, and for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. So that is an important statement. And in the purport, it says, both as friend and philosopher to Arjuna, Lord Krishna now gives his final judgment regarding Arjuna's refusal to fight. The Lord says, Arjuna, if you leave the battlefield before the battle even begins, people will call you a coward. And if you think that people may call you bad names, but that you will save your life by fleeing the battlefield, then my advice is that you'd do better to die in the battlefield. For a respectable man like you, ill fame is worse than death. So you should not flee for fear of your life. Better to die in the battlefield. That will save you from the ill fame of misusing my friendship, meaning Krishna's friendship, and from losing your prestige in society. So the final judgment of the Lord was for Arjuna to die in the battle and not withdraw. Well, yes, uh, either you uh, are victorious and you're honored, or you die and you go to the heavenly planets. Both ways, you're not a loser. By following your dharma. Dharma means your real occupational duty in life. So Arjuna was trained to be a Kshatriya. So his real occupational duty is to fight, uh, uh, to protect the principles of Dharma. And if that requires fighting, and if you're killed in the battlefield, you are not going to be a loser. You're going to go to the heavenly planets. But if it says here, but Arjuna, if you leave the battlefield before the battle even begins, people will call you a coward. And if you think that people may call you bad names, but that you will save your life by fleeing the battlefield, then my advice is that you'd do better to die in the battle. For a respectable man like you, ill fame is worse than death. So you should not flee for fear of your life. Better to die in the battle. That will save you from the ill fame of misusing my friendship and from losing your prestige in society. So this is a proverb which says, "For a respectable man, ill fame is worse than death." Okay, so now Arjuna has gotten this, what you would call a direct order, or let's say very high level advice. And let's see what Arjuna is going to do. And it continues, text 35. The great generals who have highly esteemed your name and fame will think that you have left the battlefield out of fear only, and thus they will consider you insignificant. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Krishna continued to give his verdict to Arjuna. Do not think that the great generals like Duryodhana and Karna and other contemporaries, I mean, people that are there in the battlefield, will think that you have left the battlefield out of compassion for your brothers and grandfather. They will think that you have left out of fear for your life, and thus their high estimation of your personality will go to hell. In other words, everyone will really be very disappointed in Arjuna if he leaves the battlefield, and it'll mark his reputation as zero in the eyes of all these exalted people like his brothers and Godfather and so forth. So now, text 36. Avyarcha vadamcha bahun vadishyanti tavahitaha nindantas tava samartyam Tato dukan taram nunkim. Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. In other words, really disapprove and criticize and ridicule your ability. What could be more painful for you? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Krishna was astonished in the beginning of Arjuna's uncalled for plea for compassion. And he described his compassion as befitting the non-Aryans. Now, in so many words, he has proved his statements against Arjuna's so-called compassion. So he's mentioning the word Aryan or Aryans. The Aryans were a race of very, let's say, chivalrous warriors. Once you look that up, Aryan. Chivalrous warriors, that means they were ferocious warriors that would never retreat, but would die to the last man. And they wouldn't die with wounds to their back. The wounds that killed them would be on their chest, meaning they would never be running away from the battle. What does it say? Aryan. It's pronounced Aryans. Yeah.
So apparently there is two contexts. One is the Vedic context. In the Vedic ancient Indian context, particularly in the Vedas, the term Arya referred to the noble people or honorable. It used to describe people who followed the Vedic adhered to the cultural and ethical values of the time. There is an Indo-Iranian context. The term Arya was also used by ancient Iranians in the Avesta, the sacred text of Zoroastrianism. Arya denotes a noble or respected person. And then in the 19th and 20th century, there is a misinterpretation and misuse, wherein like European scholars and racial theorists misappropriated the term Aryan to propagate pseudo-scientific racial hierarchy. The term was wrongly used to describe the so-called superior white race, supposedly originating from a common Indo-European ancestor. This misuse was notably adopted by Nazis in Germany to justify their racist ideologies, leading to widespread and devastating consequences during World War II.
Right. So the Nazis believed that they were descendants of the Aryans or Aryans, and they're a superior race. They had certain physical uh, uh, physical things about their body. They were tall, and they were white and blonde hair usually, and they had this Germanic stock, and it's called the Aryan or Aryan race, and they were like supermen. And so Hitler and his people, claimed that the Germans were the descendants of the Aryan race, and they tried to prove it by, like when they would, uh, get people to join their army, they would only choose the tall, fair-colored, fair, handsome men to join, and they were proud about that. Of course, Hitler himself was not real tall and not really real handsome, but they would try and choose those men who more or less had the physical appearance of a tall Germanic man, and that was considered to be he would be considered to be of the Aryan race. So, therefore, the Nazis had this belief that the German men were superior, and they're from the Aryan stock or the Aryan race of people.
That's right. Even the symbol that swastik.
Yeah, that's a Vedic symbol.
Yeah, it's a Vedic. I mean,
the swastika. Yeah.
So they've,
Well, the
it's
Germans.
supposed to represent auspiciousness and good fortune.
Yes.
But if you.
Well, they tried to give it a new definition, a fearful definition. So the Germans, they to learn about Vimanas, they went to South India, to Madras, and they purchased ancient scriptures about Vimana Shastras to build their rockets. So way before the United States, when the United States only had firecrackers, the Germans had real rockets, and they used them. You know, they were way ahead of the Americans. You know, their tanks and their bullets, everything was superior to American technology. That's why at the end of the war, the Americans they didn't try and kill like Werner Braun. Werner, what was his name? Werner Braun. Anyway, he was the father of the rocket technology of the Nazis. So some of those rocket engineers and the Nazis were spared. Yeah, Werner von Braun. Yeah, he they didn't put him in jail. They took him, and as long as he was willing to help them produce, rocket technology, he became a regular citizen in the United States. And the Russians also were able to capture some of the scientists that worked on the rocket engineering, and they were taken to the Soviet Union, and they helped the Russians build rockets. So Werner von Braun is a very famous man in America, and he helped the Americans because the Americans at that time, in the 1930s, they were also trying to make rockets, but their rockets were like firecrackers compared to what the Germans were doing.
So just ask ChatGPT about what is covered in the Vimana Shastra or Vaimanic Shastra.
Yeah.
Interesting. It covered the types of Vimanas. The text describes several types of Vimanas, including their shapes, sizes, and capabilities.
Right.
Mentions specific Vimanas like Shakuna Vimana, Sundara Vimana, Rukma Vimana, and Tripura Vimana, each with different designs and purposes. Technical specification. The Vaimanic Shastra included detailed descriptions of the materials used to construct the Vimanas, their propulsion systems, and their power sources.
Wow.
It describes metals and alloys like Rajaloha and Tamogarbaloha, that are supposedly used in the construction of the Vimanas.
Yeah.
And then it also covered the aerodynamic principles. The text describes principles of aerodynamics, control systems, and navigation techniques. It includes information on how Vimanas can move in various directions, including vertical takeoff and landing. It describes about power sources. It mentions different types of engines and power sources, including solar power, electric power, and even mercury vortex engines.
This is all in the Vedas.
Yes. descriptions include the use of gyroscopes.
Very advanced technology that's thousands of years old.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of demons had. It was mostly the demons that had the Vimana technology.
Yeah. Even the gyroscopes to balance and rotating parts to achieve flight stability, and even pilot training and safety. Text emphasizes the importance of training for pilots, including their physical and mental fitness. It includes safety measures, emergency protocols, and protective gear for the pilots, weapons and defense mechanisms. It also describes various types of weapons and defense mechanisms that could be equipped on Vimanas. These include projectiles, lasers, and mechanisms to create invisibility.
Invisibility.
Yeah,
To
even
be not seen.
what is it? Undetectable to radar. There is a word for that. To counteract enemy weapons. I mean, right now, some of what they put all these things into Air Force One and well,
Yeah. Yeah, but they don't know how to become incognito.
yeah.
What?
Stealth,
Yeah. They also say incognito. You can't see them, but they're there. That's dangerous.
Wow. Even the text discusses other advanced technologies like radar systems, camera systems, and methods for detecting enemy. Wow, it's all there. That's all.
Yeah, Vedas are amazing. That's all in the Vedas, right?
Yeah, Vermont, sure.
Yeah. That's why the Germans they paid high price in South India in uh what's the name of that place? Huh?
Chennai?
Chennai, yeah. They went to Chennai
Hmm.
where they knew that the colleges there or something had Vimana texts and they purchased them, paid top dollar for them, went back to Germany and it helped them to build their rockets. The Germans had, superior technology than the Americans. And but somehow or other, the Americans won the war. But you know, it was by Krishna's mercy, of course, because the Germans were demoniac. Okay, so now we are. I'll just read one more verse, which says, verse 37. Hatova prapsyasti swargam jitva va bokshya yase mahim. Tasmat utishta konteya yudaya krita nishchaya. O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up with determination and fight. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Even though there was no certainty of victory for Arjuna's side, he still had to fight. For even being killed there, he could be elevated into the heavenly planets. So it's a win-win situation. It's not a win-lose situation. Either you win and you enjoy, victory, or you die and you go to the heavenly planets. So there's no reason to walk away from the fight. But if you walk away from the fight, then you will be criticized and considered a traitor and a chicken. So there was no question of Arjuna walking away from the battlefield. That's basically what's being said here, and therefore uh, uh, Arjuna decided, after being talked to very sternly, that he should stay on the battlefield and do what he was trained to do, which is what? To fight, this is to protect the principles of Dharma. And it says, this is Krishna speaking to Arjuna. And he says, and I'll go back to text 31, considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know that there's no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles. And so there is no need for hesitation. And then he says, so in the purport to chapter 2, verse number 31, it quotes the Sanskrit Sanskrit mantras, and it says, in the battlefield, a king or kshatriya, while fighting another king, envious of him, is eligible for achieving heavenly planets after death. As the Brahmanas also attain the heavenly planets by sacrificing animals in a sacrificial fire. Of course, they don't do that anymore in Kali Yuga, but they used to do that. Therefore, killing on the battlefield on religious principles and killing animals in the sacrificial fire are not at all considered to be acts of violence, because everyone is benefited by the religious principles involved. The animal sacrifice gets a human life immediately without undergoing the gradual evolutionary process from one form to another, and the Kshatriya killed on the battlefield also attains the heavenly planets, as do the Brahmana who attain them by offering sacrifice. There are two kinds of swadharmas. Yeah, is an important word, swadharma. It means specific duties. As long as one is not liberated, one has to perform the duties of his particular body in accordance with religious principles in order to achieve liberation. When one is liberated, one's swadharma or specific duty becomes spiritual and is not in the material bodily concept. In the bodily conception of life, there are specific duties for the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, respectively, and such duties are unavoidable. Swadharma is ordained by the Lord, and this will be clarified in the 4th chapter. On the bodily plane, Swadharma is called Varnashram Dharma, or man's stepping stone for spiritual understanding. Human civilization begins from the stage of Varnashram Dharma, or specific duties, in terms of the specific modes of nature of the body obtained. Discharging one's specific duty in any field of action in accordance with the orders of higher authorities serves to elevate one to a higher status of life. Okay, 494. 1 second. I read from this before, but I'll read a little bit more from it. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. So in this verse, the word suduracharan used in this verse is very significant, and we should understand it properly. When a living entity is conditioned, he has two kinds of activities. One is conditional, and the other is constitutional. So one is material, and the other is based on shastric knowledge. As for protecting the body or abiding by the rules of society and state, certainly there are different activities, even for the devotees. in connection with the conditional life. And such activities are called conditional. Besides these, the living entity who is fully conscious of his spiritual nature and is engaged in Krishna consciousness or the devotional service of the Lord, his activities, which are called transcendental, has activities which are called transcendental. Such activities are performed in his constitutional position, meaning as a devotee of the Lord, and they are technically called devotional service. Now, in the conditioned state, sometimes devotional service and the conditional service in relation to the body will parallel one another. But then again, sometimes these activities become opposed to one another. As far as possible, a devotee is very cautious so that he does not do anything that could disrupt his wholesome condition. He knows that perfection in his activities depends on his progressive realization of Krishna consciousness. Notice it says progressive realization. Now, in other words, he's always learning more and more about how to practice Krishna consciousness properly. Sometimes, however, it may be seen that a person in Krishna consciousness commits some act which may be taken as most abominable socially or politically, but such a temporary fall down does not disqualify him. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that if a person falls down but is wholeheartedly engaged in the transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, the Lord, being situated within his heart, purifies him and excuses him from that abomination. Now, let's not misunderstand this. Someone commits a big mistake, but they don't give up devotional service. So that can be excused. One time, maybe two times, maybe three times. After that, it's not excused. Right.
Child molesters,
One time.
even though they are doing Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the worst things you can do.
That
But not see this. This is something I always was insisting in the GBC that one strike you're out. But the GBC decided that no, you have to be merciful. And what happened is that they would forgive these people that committed child molestation, and they were sent somewhere else where they continued shots. Yeah, and I always said, look, anyone who's going to do that, one strike you're out. You can't, because it's such a terrible thing that you cannot let those people have free let's say, access as the kids after that.
So then when you say like out, like they could still do devotional service, but they cannot be in the leadership position. They could not.
no, they
That's
can
what.
be in society.
They cannot be near any children.
Correct. Yeah, that should be restricted, but they could still be technically doing their devotional service.
Well, now look, the best thing is that you throw them out of the movement. They can practice Krishna consciousness on their own. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But you can't let them come back to the temple.
Yeah.
You can't let them be part of anything.
They
But they can
can
chant Hare Krishna at home and whatever.
on their own,
Yeah.
but they cannot be part of the society.
Yeah, because it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
It's very hard for a person who does something like that to stop doing it. You know.
Did they quote this verse, Maharaj, when they said that?
What?
Did they quote this verse?
Which?
Saying that you just read the purport, right? Like if
Yeah.
somebody does a wrong, were they quoting that as a ground to keep them in the moment?
It's all this wishy-washy stuff. Oh, we have to be merciful. He did service in the past. Blah blah blah. Well, I was always on the hard side. If you did something like that once, you can't trust a person like that. So he can practice Krishna consciousness at home if he wants, but he should not be in the movement, and he should never have any access to kids. Yeah.
the right thing.
What they do in other countries, some countries, is when they catch people like that, they take them up on a high-rise building, and they push them over. That's the end of that person.
But even in Christianity, people have allowed this kind of thing to continue for years and decades, and then finally, when it was caught, it was really bad.
Horrible, most horrible thing.
The people that were affected their whole lives.
Their whole life, yeah.
This is more prevalent in Muslim community as well.
What?
Sure,
This is more prevalent in the Muslim community.
Child molestation? That depends. Well, it's prevalent everywhere. It's not just only amongst the Muslims, all over the
For the
place.
Muslims, it's on the boys, So it's different to the Muslims.
What are you saying, that homosexuality or no, child molestation is a frequent happening thing in Islam?
Yes.
Yeah, proof of that?
Prabhu can.
Who?
Prabhu is looking for it.
Or did you hear about it somewhere?
There are a lot of articles and videos.
Well, why don't you look it up? Let's see what it says.
GPT said content promote before it may violate their usage policy.
What?
Because we're asking questions about something, about Muslim culture and child molestation, then it right away detected that we're asking things that may be controversial. So it stopped me from taking that question.
ChatGPT is not allowing him to ask that question.
Oh, pray to the Muslims.
We don't want.
Oh my God. Well, don't go there. You can go somewhere else. Just look it up just on the internet. Is there massive child molestation in Islam or is in Islamic countries? Because it's controversial. Why can't they answer? That means probably the guy who started chat, whatever, probably a Muslim.
So it is there everywhere, Maharaj.
Yeah.
It is not pertaining to any relation. I think it is there everywhere.
That's true.
But probably prominent in few areas.
What does it say? Is there any answer to that on the internet?
So there is an article about the hypocrisy of child abuse in many Muslim countries. Some Muslims are fond of condemning Western morality, alcoholism, nudity, homosexuality being cited, but Muslims do not have a monopoly on morality. And then there's some documentation on Dancing Boys of Afghanistan. It exposed rich men buys boys as young as 11 for sexual slavery.
There you go. So it's in the Muslim countries.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately. Okay. So I think we are over time now. And I think the Muslims are coming to get us.
Traced our IP address.
And we should be careful. Actually, they might trace out.
No, but when it is a fact that when Muslims catch homosexuals, they take them up to the top floor of a high rise and they just push them over, and they die. There's no court, there's no jail. They solve the problem in 10 minutes. Why don't you look that up? In some Muslim countries, when a homosexual is found out, they take him up on a elevator to the top floor of a high rise and they throw him over. And it's not considered murder.
According to Sharia law,
Yeah. Oh, Sharia. Oh, wow. It's just bona fide. Go ahead.
one can be punished by death.
For molesting children. Yeah. It's a fact. Women also, they're caught, being promiscuous. And what they do is they dig a big hole, they put the woman in the hole, and they fill the dirt so that, her arms and legs are stuck in the dirt and just her head shows. And then they throw stones at her head until she dies like that. And they do that to men also. But they do especially do it to women when women are caught having illicit sex. This is caused. This is, of course, happens in the ultra, uh, what you would call traditional Muslim countries, like Saudi Arabia, places like that. There's pictures of that. There's photos of that too. Thank you very much.
Can continue in the morning.
Yeah.